Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today is Thursday, June 18th, 2020. Today I'm going to discuss the latest news in terms of the return of sports, latest with Major League Baseball and where things stand there, and the NBA as well. We'll go over the KBO games from this morning, and we'll look ahead to Friday's games. We'll go over all the soccer from yesterday, La Liga, Bundesliga, and the Premier League. And we'll look ahead to the La Liga games for today. We'll preview tonight's episode of the Celebrity Watch Party, and I'll do my 2014 Top 10 NBA players and games. Okay, we'll start with the return to sports post-COVID. Major League Baseball, most promising it's been in a while. Jon Heyman might have egg on his face, especially if there's no agreement done within the next 24 to 48 hours. He tweeted out about 24 hours ago that the commissioner and players union, Tony Clark, had what's being called a productive meeting face-to-face in Arizona. Meeting was called at Manfred's request. That was good. And where he failed was that he reported that players and union are closing in on an agreement to play the 2020 season, and the deal is expected to be for prorated pay and exclude expanded playoffs. And then all the other reporters were saying not done yet, not done yet, not done yet, and then the MLBPA came out with a statement via its PR and said that there's no agreement in place yet. But from the reporters other than Heyman, in defense of Heyman, they're close. It's not like they're not even close. They're close to getting an agreement done. But closing in on an agreement makes it sound like it's done. Like, the term closing in is a phrase that Adrian Wojnarowski and Jeff Passan use when reporting free agent signings in their respective sports. And then Manfred did confirm that they met with Tony Clark and that production or that meeting did go well. And then Ken Rosenthal tweeted out 60 games in 70 days. So that's good in case that there's rain outs, then you could have makeup days. Season starting July 19th, July 20th. Full prorated salary. Expanded playoffs this year and next year. Waiving of any potential grievance. So that's what the proposal includes. Jeff Passan, there's no agreement. MLB knows players must get full pro rata. League wants players to waive right to grieve. Expanded playoffs, a part of this. Number of games is vital. Other issues too. There's work to be done, but a pathway to a deal does exist. That last sentence makes it seem like that Passan said that it's close. The fact that there's a pathway. So that is very good. And then the commissioner's statement is promising. As I mentioned before, at my request, Tony Clark and I met for several hours yesterday in Phoenix. We left that meeting with a jointly developed framework that we agreed could form the basis of an agreement and subject to conversations with our respective constituents. I summarized that framework numerous times in the meeting and sent Tony a written summary today. Consistent with our conversations yesterday, I'm encouraging the clubs to move forward, and I trust Tony is doing the same. So, Passan said it best. It's promising. So, if there's more news to report regarding the comeback of Major League Baseball and whether there's an agreement or not, we'll certainly talk about it on the podcast. NBA, it just looks like that as of right now, that's still set to come back July 30th. And then Woj reported with Zach Lowe yesterday that the Coaches Association feared new league standards and guidelines that could bar team staffers in high-risk categories for coronavirus from Orlando restart could severely jeopardize their future employment opportunities. So that's interesting. That's probably more for some of these like high-risk coaches and whatnot. So Adam Silver did say that he was going to meet with the players that are concerned about it. But I do still think that there will be a basketball season. I think there's probably a less than 3% chance that it doesn't happen. I don't want to say 0% chance that it doesn't happen because you never know. COVID cases are going up in Florida. Florida's at its peak. I was speaking with somebody yesterday, and Florida COVID cases were just a flat line these last couple months. And then now there's a spike because of larger crowds and whatnot. And then there's the argument that there's more testing, and that's certainly a part of it. And the numbers that these governors absolutely preach home in their daily press conferences are the hospitalization numbers. If the hospitalizations are down in Florida, then that's good, because then most of the COVID cases are just cases that of people that are asymptomatic and that will be okay and that are not in the hospital. So, yeah. And then Zach Lowe follows up the Woj tweet. Absent a significant threat, we believe a coach should be able to understand and assume their individual risks, waive liability, and coach in Orlando. So that's what the Coaches Association said to ESPN's Zach Lowe. So, like I said, any new NBA, baseball, or even hockey news I have for you, then I'll discuss it on the show. And then the NBA did send out also its plan to play plan the other day, and I don't think I discussed it. And there's a rule that you can conceivably catch somebody from not doing the right things, and you could potentially be punished for it. And I think that's in wake of what Rudy Gobert did to Donovan Mitchell, and how the whole coronavirus thing happened and pretty much forced not just the cancellation or the postponement of all these sports, but the shutdown of our country and all these places like Disney World and Disneyland and all these fun amusement parks and whatnot. And that's something that I just want to mention very quickly. Now I want to discuss the KBO games from last night and look ahead to tomorrow's games. Or I'm sorry, to this morning's games. What am I saying? Last night. So without further ado, here we go. NC and Kia was postponed due to weather. KT over SK 5-3, Doosan over Samsung 7-3, Kaiwum over Latte 3-2, and LG over Hanwha 9-7. New matchups begin tomorrow 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Latte and KT, Samsung and Kia, Hanwha and NC, Doosan and LG, SK and Kaiwum. Latte and KT, I think Latte will win that one on the road. Samsung, Kia, I expect Kia to win at home. The Dinos are due to bounce back. They lost 2 in a row. I think they'll knock off the worst team in the sport in Hanwha. Doosan and LG. I would expect that to be a fun little series. 2 of the better teams in the league. I'm going to go with LG at home, and in SK and Kaiwum, I'm going to go with Kaiwum at home as well tomorrow morning. Now I'm going to go over Bundesliga results from yesterday. There's no games today. Next time we'll see Bundesliga is Saturday. And we'll obviously preview and pick those games on tomorrow's show. Eintracht Frankfurt over Schalke 2-1. Mainz over Dortmund 2-0. RP Leipzig and Dusseldorf ended in a tie. Hoffenheim and Augsburg 3-1. Hoffenheim wins, and Leverkusen over FC Köln 3-1. Your scores from yesterday in Bundesliga. And now I'm going to go over La Liga from yesterday, and then we'll look ahead and pick the games today. So, Valladolid and Celta Vigo 0-0 tie. Eibar and the Athletic Club 2-2 tie. And Atletico Madrid over Osasuna 5-0. So a dominant win for Atletico Madrid. 2 games today. Alaves and Real Sociedad and Real Madrid against Valencia. Your 2 matchups for today. 1:30 is Alaves and Real Sociedad. I'm going to go with Real Sociedad here. They are the much better team, and I do expect them to win potentially by multiple goals. Real Madrid and Valencia, definitely going to go with Real Madrid here. I think it could be close. Valencia is not a bad team by any stretch, but I just think that Real Madrid is better. And that's the 4 o'clock Eastern Time game today. Now I'm going to go over the Premier League games from yesterday. It's fun to have that league back, for sure. Aston Villa and Sheffield United 0-0 tie. And then Manchester City over Arsenal 3-0. So the Man City win was predictable. And the tie between Aston Villa and Sheffield United surprised me mildly. And then there's games tomorrow, which we'll preview on tomorrow's show, as well as the games that will be played during the rest of the weekend. Now I'm going to recap last night's episode of Celebrity Watch Party. Preview tonight's episode. What am I saying? This show's fun. You always see the celebrities in their homes, watching TV. So the Osbournes and the Bucks. The episode's called It's a Party with the Fab Five. So the Fab Five are making an appearance. That's pretty neat. I think you'll see a lot of clips from the game shows, which they've been showing a lot lately. You'll be seeing, I believe, clips of the news as they are covering protests and possibly the reopenings of states that are entering new phases of their recovery from the coronavirus. I won't be shocked if there's golf that is being watched in this, especially the tournament from last weekend, because last weekend golf had a tournament. I think you'll see maybe the Bucks watching that. You might see the soccer. That would be a lot of cool if you see the Premier League and La Liga and Bundesliga. I won't be shocked if you even see KBO. So it's pretty unpredictable, the things you see in this show. Extreme Makeover Home Edition, they were showing, I believe that was 2 episodes ago. And the Discovery Family Channel has been airing Extreme Home Makeover episodes during this pandemic, as I found that out very recently, and that makes a lot of sense now that they showed that show on Celebrity Watch Party. Now I'm going to do my 2014 top 10 NBA players. 2014 was a crazy year for the NBA. There was a lot of players that had good seasons. That year was more wide open than given credit for the NBA title. Honorable mentions: Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade of the Miami Heat. Dwayne Wade was sort of in decline that year. Klay Thompson, Golden State Warriors. That was when Klay really started to improve as a player and come into his own. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love. Kyrie Irving, Cleveland Cavaliers. Kevin Love, Minnesota Timberwolves and Cleveland Cavaliers. Kevin Love was traded that year. Kyrie and Love and LeBron all played together in the beginning of 2014. The end of 2014, the beginning of the 14-15 season. Dwight Howard, Houston Rockets. This was one of the last solid Dwight Howard seasons. His first year with Houston. Damian Lillard, Portland Trailblazers. He hit the game-winning, series-winning buzzer beater for the Blazers over the Rockets, which we'll get to in the next segment. Anthony Davis, New Orleans Pelicans. This was year 2 for him in the league, and he really started to show people that he was going to be an elite big man in the NBA. Carmelo Anthony, New York Knicks. This was his last great season in the NBA. After that, he got injured in the 14-15 season. And then he started to deteriorate as a player. And the Knicks did not make the postseason in the 13-14 season, but Melo was awesome. And it just doesn't get enough credit because of how bad the Knicks were. And Melo, I felt, got too much blame for that. And now, without further ado, my top 10 NBA players of 2014. Oh, and I have one more honorable mention. Tony Parker, San Antonio Spurs. Probably one of the last great years Tony Parker's had in the NBA as well, as he led the Spurs, or helped lead the Spurs to their first title in 7 seasons, and the last one of the Tim Duncan era. And now my top 10. Number 10, Kawhi Leonard, San Antonio Spurs. The Finals MVP, the best player in the 2014 NBA Finals. Yeah, I said it. He was the best player in that series, and that's why he won the Finals MVP. And I predicted before that Finals that he was going to be the MVP of that series because of what he did the previous year against Miami, and he probably would have won the Finals MVP in 2013 too had Ray Allen not made that shot. So Kawhi Leonard, he was really had his second coming out party, the first one being in the 2013 Finals, and the 2014 Finals was when really people were turning heads yet again, and people were reminded, oh yeah, this guy is an up-and-coming star. 9, Lamarcus Aldridge, Portland Trailblazers. He was the best player on the Blazers at the time. Nobody talks about it because everybody thought Damian Lillard was. Damian Lillard is now, and now it's Dame's team, but at the time, Lamarcus Aldridge was the best player on the Blazers, and I don't think he got the credit that he deserved. He helped the Blazers overachieve that year and make the second round. 8, Joakim Noah, Chicago Bulls. I blanked on what team he was on for a second. Whoops. But yeah, Noah, best year of his career, helped lead the Bulls to the postseason. They were I believe the 4th seed that year, after many people thought they were going to be tanking because they traded Luol Deng. Derrick Rose got hurt again. And Joakim Noah pretty much was in FU mode the rest of the season and helped lead the Bulls to the postseason, although they lost against the Wizards. John Wall is someone else I forgot. He should have been on this honorable mentions list too because he helped lead the Wizards to the second round. But yeah, like I said, so many players were awesome in 2014. And I left off Tony Parker and John Wall on this list. And that just tells you how loaded it was that year in terms of talent. 7, Paul George, Indiana Pacers. Helped lead the Pacers to the conference finals. I think he got too much blame for the Pacers' unexpected and bizarre collapse in that season where they would have weird blowout home losses against the Hawks and the Wizards in the previous 2 rounds, and then they found their way to the conference finals, and they lost in 6 to Miami. They won Game 1, and then Miami won the next 3 to go up 3-1. Indiana survives Game 5 at home. They come back from 11 down because LeBron was in foul trouble. That was a fluky Game 5 win, if you ask me. That series should have been over in 5, and the Heat had a chance to win it at the buzzer. We'll talk about that game in the next segment, that Game 5, and then the Pacers get blown out in Game 6 by the Heat. And then Paul George blows out his Achilles in the Olympics, not the Olympics, the World Cup or whatever it was, that activity that they have sometimes, and that really hurt Paul George, and it took a while for him to bounce back. 6, Russell Westbrook, Oklahoma City Thunder. He really put the Thunder on his back at times when Kevin Durant was injured, especially in that calendar year, 2014. And he really became a stat monster that year. 5, James Harden, Houston Rockets. James Harden, I think, got too much blame for that Blazers series loss, as well as Dwight Howard. And I thought he was great in 13-14, especially in the start of the 14-15 season. And ultimately, the Rockets wound up being if I'm not mistaken, the 2 seed that year. It made the conference finals. So I think James Harden does deserve a lot of credit. 4, Stephen Curry, Golden State Warriors. Curry's this high because he built on that breakout year in 12-13. And then in the 2013-14 season, he was awesome again. And then he went toe-to-toe with Chris Paul in the playoffs in 2014. You can make a case they should have won that series, and people think they should have, and they failed to take advantage of the Clippers' turmoil with the Donald Sterling debacle. But hey, that's not the Warriors' fault. You give the Clippers credit for rallying their troops and wind up winning that series in spite of that. And they won a classic Game 7, which we'll get into in the next segment. And then the next year, Mark Jackson gone, Steve Kerr in, and then Steph Curry makes yet another jump into MVP consideration. 3, Chris Paul, Los Angeles Clippers. Yet again, Chris Paul, as I just talked about, he was awesome that season. He was hurt for a little while, but he was the best player on the Clippers team that you could make a case should have beaten Oklahoma City in the second round. And although they didn't, Chris Paul was just awesome in that postseason, and then he was really good in the 14-15 season as well. Blake Griffin, yet another honorable mention on this list that I forgot about. And he really carried the Clippers while Chris Paul was hurt that year. But I just think that Chris Paul is just flat out better than Blake Griffin, And CP3, I think, will go down as someone that's really underappreciated in this era of great players, especially overshadowed by the next 2 guys I'm going to mention. Number 2, Kevin Durant, Oklahoma City Thunder. Helped lead the Thunder to the conference finals yet again. And then they fell short against the San Antonio Spurs. Kevin Durant won the MVP that year, but he wasn't number 1 on my list because he was injured a couple times throughout that season and in the 14-15 season as well. Number 1, LeBron James, Miami Heat. Tough call between James and Durant, but I ultimately went with LeBron because the Heat made the finals and the Thunder didn't. LeBron's not why they lost to the Spurs. The Spurs were just better than the Heat, and the Heat were a team that just looked defeated, and they ran out of gas because they really were a team that was big on mileage. And you saw the Warriors somewhat deteriorate in the finals last year against the Raptors. And then they got too desperate and brought Kevin Durant back. But yeah, that happens with some of these dynasty-esque teams sometimes. You catch the vulnerability and you just ultimately run out of gas. Like, you can't win every year. Like, Pat Riley had that great speech after that season, after that finals loss, and he pretty much preached that point home. And LeBron then went to Cleveland that summer and really rejuvenated that franchise as well. And now my 2014 top 10 games. A lot of honorable mentions on the games list. Like I said, 2014 was a great year for the NBA. There's just no doubt about it. Spurs Thunder, May 31st, Game 6, 112-107, Spurs overtime win to clinch a berth in the NBA Finals. So Miami had won the previous night, that Game 6, and then the Spurs won Game 7, or Game 6 the next day at Oklahoma City. That series should have gone 7, in my opinion. I thought Oklahoma City should have won Game 6, because I thought that Durant and Westbrook were really good in that game, but ultimately just couldn't get the job done. That series should have gone 7. Not suggesting the Spurs lose Game 7 at home, but that series should have definitely gone 7. Spurs Blazers, December 19th of the 14-15 season. 129-119, Blazers triple overtime win. That was a TNT game, if I'm not mistaken. That was an all-time classic. I know it was a nationally televised game. I just don't remember if it was TNT or ESPN. I think it was TNT, because I think Marv Albert was calling the game, or it could have been Kevin Harlan. But I'll look it up. But that was just a classic game I remember watching. Thunder Suns, December 31st, so New Year's Eve. 137-134 OKC win. That was the final score, and that was a regulation game, which is nuts. Kevin Durant led the way and ultimately was the best player on the court, like he normally is every night. And he carried the Thunder to a big win at the time in Phoenix against the Suns team that the year prior exceeded all expectations. Everyone thought that they were going to tank. And then ultimately were a surprise team that almost made the 8th seed in the Western playoffs, and then they regressed the next year into mediocrity. Clippers Warriors, April 24th, Game 3, 98-96. Clippers win. They went up 2-1 in that series, and then that was right before the Donald Sterling thing happened. Thunder Grizzlies, the same night, April 24th, Game 3, 98-95, Memphis overtime win. That was an all-time series. Memphis was up 3-2 in that series. Memphis could have won that series had Zach Randolph not got suspended in Game 7 of that series. So that's a little what if. Like, Durant and Westbrook go out in round 1. Scotty Brooks is probably fired 1 year earlier than he was. There's a lot of what-ifs with that series. Another Thunder Grizzlies game, April 26th, so 2 days later, Game 4, 92-89, OKC overtime when Durant and Westbrook lead the way, and the Thunder bounce back to win Game 4 to even up that series at 2 apiece. Rockets Blazers, April 27th, Game 4, 123-120, Portland overtime win as the Blazers went up 3-1 in that series. And the last honorable mention, Grizzlies Thunder, April 29th, Game 5, 199, Memphis overtime win. So Memphis comes away with the win in Oklahoma City to go up 3-2. And I forgot that Memphis was up 3-2 in that series. I thought that they were up 2-1 in that series, but I forgot that series even went 7. I thought that OKC won that in 6. And then Z-Bo was suspended in Game 6 at home, but no. I forgot. Memphis went up 3-2. Then OKC wins a competitive Game 6. And in Game 7, Randolph suspended. OKC takes advantage. And now my top 10 games of 2014. 10, Heat Pacers, May 28th, Game 5. 93-90 Pacers win. Talked about it earlier, discussing Paul George. LeBron's in foul trouble. Indiana comes back from a double-digit deficit to win and make the series a little interesting as they forced a Game 6 in South Beach. Paul George dominated in that second half. Dwayne Wade was just slow in that game. There's no other way to say it. Going up against the athletic, much more athletic at the time, Paul George. Blazers Rockets is number 9. April 20th, Game 1. 122-120 Portland overtime win. Lamarcus Aldridge was an absolute beast in this game as the Blazers went up 1-0 in that series. 8, Clippers Warriors. May 1st, Game 6. 199 Golden State win to force a Game 7. Great game at Oracle. And the Warriors survived to force the winner-take-all game. 7, Grizzlies Spurs, December 17th, 117-116, Grizzlies triple overtime win. That, I think, was an ESPN game, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess that game between the Blazers and the Spurs was on ESPN. I thought it was TNT. But maybe I'm thinking of another Spurs-Blazers game that went to overtime and that the Blazers came away with the win. Because why do I feel like the Blazers are always on TNT? Yeah, Grizzlies-Spurs, I think, was ESPN. And, or maybe it was a Tuesday night, and then that game was a Thursday night, that game that I talked about earlier between the Blazers and the Spurs. But maybe Grizzlies-Spurs was NBA TV, I don't remember. But I remember watching this game. It was a 117-116 Grizzlies triple overtime win in the regular season. Great game, triple overtime between two contenders in Memphis and San Antonio. 6, Thunder Clippers, May 11th, Game 4, 101-99 Clippers win. Clippers come back from 20, I think it was like 26 down. And they come firing back. Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan lead the way. Big threes from J.J. Redick and Jamal Crawford. So, that was obviously a great game for the Clippers, although they wound up losing the next two to lose that series. 5, Warriors-Clippers, Game 7, May 3rd. 126-121 Clippers win. This was an all-timer in terms of a Game 7. That final score was deceiving in my mind. That probably should have been a 3-point or a 2-point, maybe even a 1-point Clipper win. But Chris Paul made big play after big play. Steph Curry kept responding. And the Warriors wound up coming just short of moving on to the next round and perhaps saving Mark Jackson's job. That's a crazy what if had they won that series. Maybe Mark Jackson keeps his job and the Warriors probably, maybe they still do become the dynasty, but except under Mark Jackson. But Steve Kerr is probably coaching the New York Knicks, and maybe the Knicks look a little better as a franchise at the time because maybe they hire Steve Kerr instead of Derek Fisher, who is a disaster. And so there's like a lot of what-ifs with that Game 7, tying to not just those two franchises, but like I just alluded to, the Knicks as well. And the Clippers, to some degree. What if they get rid of Doc Rivers, potentially? Like if they lose that game and then they lose, and now the next year they made the second round. But like there's a lot of Clippers what-ifs too. But maybe they don't fire Doc Rivers. Maybe they trade DeAndre Jordan or something. So yeah, a lot of what-ifs there with that Game 7. 4, Clippers Thunder, May 13th, Game 5, 105-104 OKC win. Clippers are up, about to go up 3-2 in the series. And Durant and Westbrook lead a OKC comeback for them to go up 3-2. 3, Spurs Mavericks, April 26th, Game 3. 109-108 Mavericks win. Vince Carter, buzzer-beating 3 to send the Mavericks up 2-1 in that series. This is forgotten. The Spurs almost lost that series to the Mavericks. Nobody talks about that. That Mavericks team was not very good. Dirk was nearing the end of his prime. Monte Ellis was on this team. Vince Carter. Yeah, like a lot of mediocre type of players. And Dirk really wasn't all that great that year either. He was still good, but he wasn't peak Dirk Nowitzki like he was in the 2011 finals. So yeah, that Mavs team took the Spurs to 7. That's credit to Randy Carlisle. Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle deserves the credit for that, in my opinion. But ultimately, the Spurs blew out Dallas in Game 7, and then they turned it back on, dominated against the Blazers, although they did lose a game against Portland in that next series. And then knock out OKC in what was a closer series than the numbers suggest, and then they dominate the Heat. And arguably should have swept the Heat because Game 2 of that finals, again another honorable mention game, was a 98-96 Miami win. Although the final score was somewhat deceiving because the Spurs kept hitting buckets as they're fouling and whatnot, so that's why that score was somewhat deceiving. But you could argue Miami should have won that game. And then there's a lot of what-ifs of that series. There's like the LeBron James fanboys saying that they would have swept San Antonio had not been for the cramps. I disagree with that. The Heat are probably up 2-0 if not, if LeBron doesn't have cramps. Maybe San Antonio still does win Game 1 regardless of the cramps, but maybe Miami's up 2-0 and maybe that series goes 6 or 7 with the Spurs winning instead. Miami, I don't think would have swept San Antonio. No way. Number 2, Nets-Raptors, May 4th, Game 7, 104-103 Brooklyn win. This was a underrated game. This was the coming out party for the Raptors. This was their first year in this Kyle Lowry era in the playoffs. Lowry was blocked by Paul Pierce at the buzzer nearly to save the day for Brooklyn as they advanced to the next round to face the Miami Heat. And number 1, Rockets-Blazers, May 2nd, Game 6, 99-98, Portland win. Damian Lillard, series-ending buzzer beater to send the Blazers to the second round to officially pull off the upset over James Harden, Dwight Howard, and the Houston Rockets. So there you have it, top 10 NBA games list. And that's it for the show today. I'll be back tomorrow recapping the latest news related to the return of sports post-COVID. We'll recap the Celebrity Watch Party episodes, soccer. We'll pick the NASCAR races for the weekend, KBO. We'll have a update for the RBC Heritage as well. And my 2014 top 10 NHL players and games. Hope you have a great day, everyone.